Hello, it's Katie. We're going to be making this ring today. So it's it looks like it's quite an ornate ring, but it's quite a simple version of a encapsulated bead ring. And it's got a little bit of detail on the side here, and it's got this really nice band that's just really comfortable to wear. There's nothing really at the back to be against your skin there, so there's no ends of wires at the back there, so it's really comfortable to wear. Now this weave here, this is the one that I've done in my wire weaving part 2 video, so I will go over it very briefly, but if you want a little bit more in-depth version of this weave, I will pop a link at the top and maybe check that out either before you start or after you've watched this video, just to refresh yourself on doing this weave here. It's quite a simple weave, but the other video is a little bit more in-depth. Okay, and then we're going to do a basket weave for these sections, top and bottom. Okay, so let's just have a look at what we need. We are going to need some 8mm beads, so these are some Agate 8mm beads. We're going to need some wire, so for the ring shank and all the base wires, those are all 0.8mm, and I've used some silver plated round copper wire from Jewellery Maker, and I've also used, from Jewellery Maker, some 0.4mm round plated copper wire there. So, and then we're also going to need some either snips or flush cutters, some chain nose or narrow nosed flat nose pliers, and some round nose pliers, and of course we'll need a ring mandrel. Now if you haven't got a professional ring mandrel with sizes, what you can do is maybe find sort of kind of the really chunky permanent markers or something like that to work on, and you can gauge kind of what you can find around the home that's going to fit kind of your ring size, just by putting a ring that you already wear onto that and seeing what you can find. Okay, so I'm just going to move all this out of the way and we'll get started. So we're going to make the ring shank first. So for the ring shank we're going to be using a weave that I did in my wire weaving part 2 video, which is the link's available just up above there, and it's a very easy weave. It's working from one loop and then we're working over two wires with each side as we go along. Now working out the length that we need to make our ring shank is worked out like so. So you can either guess at it and just kind of offer it up, but I'm going to look at making my ring around about a size M. Then I'm going to bring it down a size, so I'm around about the size N mark, not M. So I've brought this little piece of scrap wire around that section and cross those over. I'm holding that quite tightly around that end section because it's going to go smaller a size. So once we've finished wrapping it, it's going to be a little bit smaller. I'm just going to snip off and leave around about a centimetre free, just in that gap there. So I've got a little bit of centimetre free, and then all I'm going to do is smooth out this piece of wire. So, and you can use your pliers and things just to kind of help you smooth out that piece of wire so that you get a length of the weave that you want to make. So I know I want my weave to be that length, and that's going to work perfectly for this design. So that's just a little tip on how to size your ring. Okay, so we're going to move on to creating this weave. So I'm just going to do it very briefly, and we're going to take a piece of wire that's actually about 1 metre long. So you're going to work up with about 50 centimetres at a time. I've just got a smaller section here just for demo purposes. So you're going to work with 100 centimetres. We're going to make a little loop in our wire. Just let that focus. So make a little loop in our wire. We're going to pop one of our wires onto there and tighten that loop around one wire. And working in this central section here, so this is where we want our ring shank to be, the actual part the band that goes around. We're going to pop one wire at the side of one side of the loop and one wire at the other side of the loop, and my working wires are coming from underneath. Okay, so just smoothing those out a little bit. We're going to work on one side and then the other side. So we're going to work on this side and we're going to come over 2 wires and through, push down, and then this wire stays over here. And then we're going to come to this side, over 2 wires, push through, push down, and this side stays over here. And this is all we're going to do all the way down. So this wire's always staying at this side and this wire's always staying at this side. So it's a really nice easy weave. Even though you're using 2 wires, it's really, really simple, and it builds up really quickly and gives a really nice detailed weave that's actually, for quite a detailed weave, it's very, very comfortable against the skin, so it's an excellent one for rings. So just building up a little bit of that there. So, and then I'll bring that just to the camera so you can see that there. There you go. So it builds up really quickly, and you're going to make this length that we just made here. Okay, so this is my pre-made piece. So I'm going to pop it onto my mandrel where I want it to be, but remember we're going a size bigger initially. And I want all 3 wires to cross each other, not in between, don't sort of intermingle them together, just cross each other, and then we want that around about a centimetre gap there. Okay, so don't worry too much at the moment, as long as when you've pushed it all together, we've got a nice centimetre gap there, that is absolutely fine. Now the bottom 2, just holding it nice and firm, we're just going to pull away a little bit, and the top 2, we're just going to pull those away a little bit, so just a little bit at each side. And we've still got these tail wires on from our weaving wire, we need those, so don't let them go anywhere. Okay, so you're going to choose which wire you want to use for your bead, which is going to be one of these 2. So it's entirely up to you, it doesn't really matter which one it is at all, but whichever one you don't want to use, just move that up with the rest of them. So I'm just going to move all those 3 up there just for now, and we're going to be using this one here. So what we want to do is pick a nice bead, whichever one you want. Okay, and I'm going to pop my bead onto my wire, but I'm not going to let it come all the way down just yet, because what I want to do is get one of these wires over here to go over there. So I'm going to use the one that's at the bottom here. It doesn't matter which one you use, you can choose. I'm just going to pop it through in the opposite direction. Okay, so let's move that up. So I've popped my weaving wire through in the opposite direction, and I'm going to pull this gently. I'm not going to push my bead all the way down yet. I'm going to pull this gently, just so that we don't get a strange loop at the other side. So you can see that loop starting to form there. So I want to pull it until we get it to come right in there. And now I can push this together and pull this wire through here, just moving those out of the way that little bit further. And now I've got a working wire on both sides, okay? So I can pull that through nice and firmly, and I've got my bead in the middle there. Now you will have a little gap at the edge at each side, don't worry about that, it's going to get covered up. And what we want to do now is wrap this wire around our ring shank. So we do that, we want it nice and tight, so I've got a little bit of tension just on these wires here holding this in, and then I'm going to take it over the top of here, so it's coming over the top of this part of the ring shank. And then because I've got that longer wire, I've got enough to push it through. Don't worry about the shape of your ring. If it starts to misshape a little, don't worry about that too much, because we can go in and reform that. So it's come over and it's gone under once, and then we're going to go over the top once more. Okay, if your ring has distorted a little bit, you can just pop that back on the mandrel, don't worry about that. So what we want is, let's bring this up, we want our bead nice and close as possible. Now I've come around and wrapped one whole time round and then across the front again, and now I'm going to snip that off because I don't want this to become too bulky. And that's enough to secure that bead in place and that wire in place, and we're ready to start working on our weaves. So I'm just going to squeeze that end in, just support everything around it, just so it's not going to scratch anything. Now we can start working on other pieces. Okay, so we're going to start working on those weaves. Now one wire is going to create one weave, one of these weaving wires, and one wire is going to create the other one. The side that's got 3 wires on it, what I want you to do is that whichever wire is at the top, just move that out of the way for a minute. Try not to form a fracture in that, just smoothly move it out of the way, and we'll deal with that right at the very end, that last wire. So we want these wires very slightly separated, so we have got a gap in the middle so we can create this figure of 8 weave inside it, and then we're going to do the same with the bottom. And as we're building up this weave, we want to try and start to shape it round a little bit. So this is my weaving wire. I can find a way round for it. Now it's up to you which side you want to start on. It really doesn't matter, but this is going to be a figure of 8 weave, so it doesn't really matter. So I'm coming over the top wire. I'm going to wrap that top wire twice, so once and twice, and then we're going to come up in between the bead and the next wire and wrap this wire twice, so once and twice. We want to leave that little bit of a gap there just so that we get a nice bit of detail in between. So that's wrapped twice, then we can come over, under and over the opposite side and continue wrapping. So as you can see, when I'm wrapping, I'm actually placing the wire where I want it to be. So I've popped it that way, I've popped it this way, and then I wrap it in between. It's not a case of kind of wrapping around and then pushing up. I've actually placed the wire exactly where I want it to be. I've pushed it down, and there we go. So we're going to build up both of these sides. It won't take too long, but I will, because it's a bit boring watching me doing the same thing over and over, I will move on to one that I've pre-done in a second when I've just showed you this. So you can see this figure of 8 working its way. Let's do one more on this side. And there we go. So you can see, bring that up there. It's going to focus. There we go. Taking its time today. So we've got the 2 wraps on each side, and there's a figure of 8 weave in between this section. So I'm going to move on and show you this next piece. So I've wrapped this figure of 8 weave around both of these sections using that wire that we already had available to us, and just on this side, so the side that we finished that's going to wrap over the little wraps that we did initially just to fix that gemstone in, I've done about 7 or 8 extra wraps just on one wire, that's all. So, and then we've got this wire still free, don't worry about that one for a moment, and these 2 wires I've just finished on 2 wraps. And just make sure that you've wrapped enough for this to come around your gemstone and just slightly come over that ring shank at both sides. Okay, we don't need it to come all the way around, just so it covers over that ring shank. Okay, so I'm just going to move my hands down just so it's a little bit easier to work. So we're going to work on this side first. So I've got all those wraps in, and I'm just going to shape it around. So I'm supporting everything. I've got supporting the stone with my back of my finger and my thumb, and it's just come over, and like I say, it's just coming over that side. And then all I'm going to do is work these wires down just like we did at the opposite side, and I can do kind of just taking it in turns, one at a time. So I'm taking that more internal one first, and if you want to, because it will give you a little bit more grip, you can use your pliers to bring that around and bring it nice and tightly around to the back. Then I'm going to do the same with this one, so I'm going to follow the exact same place that this first one's come through. So I'm popping my pliers through there, grabbing the wire so it's nice and tight to the ring shank, and then I'm bringing it up the front there, and then this one again up the front there. Now that is essentially finished, so all I need to do, that's going to be nice and secure. I've got 2 wraps around there with each wire. I can cut that off on that top edge, and then what I want to do is I want to spend a little bit of time just encouraging them ends to be more rounded around. So I'm actually kind of grabbing them and pulling them around with my pliers just to get rid of those ends, but it takes a little bit of time, just making sure that you've got nothing kind of scratchy on there. So that would take a little bit more time. It's practically almost there, but not quite. So this side, what I wanted to do is, because we've got this extra little bit of length of wire here, that's the wire that we use to wrap in that stone, we're going to use this wire to create a little bit of detail. So this one that's kind of in the middle now at the moment. So this wire is going to come across, and it's going to come over just like we just did at the other side. So, and it's going to come next to those initial wraps that we did just to lock in that gemstone. But again, all we need to do is go round and a half and snip off. And again, making sure we spend a little bit of time, a bit more time than I'm doing here, but I'm doing it for demo purposes. And then we're going to make a little spiral. So the beginning of that spiral is going to have those wraps on that we did, those extra little wraps on that we did. So I've just brought that around so it's kind of getting itself in position. Then we're going to cut this down to not very much, about an extra centimetre of bare wire. And we're going to take those round nose pliers and just start, just the very, very tip, just start to bring that round very, very slightly. And just like I do with all kind of swirls, I just nip off that very end, just because it will be very straight on that very end. So now I've got kind of that little bit of a swirl coming round, and then I can bring this around and just reposition my pliers. And that little swirl is going to sit in that gap that we had and kind of create a little bit more detail, but it's actually hiding something as well. Now this wire at the back, we don't really need to do much at all with that, but you will see that we've got more wraps on this side than we have on this side. So all I did with this was bring this around the back, kind of arched it around the back, and then brought that over and just added a wrap on this side. So all it's doing is sitting behind that little bit of weaving. So I'm just going to bring this around and it's just going to sit. If I just bring it in with my pliers so I can bring that nice and tight around there. So all it's done is come around the back of that weave against that stone, and then it's just going to kind of lay down against here, and again snipping this off. So we don't make any cuts at all that are inside, because that is sure kind of over time to create some sort of irritation against the skin, because you may end up with sort of something catching. But like you can see, I'm just using my pliers just to kind of smooth those ends down and get them into shape. But that is your ring. And now when we pop it on, let's find the right size. So you'll need to kind of shape it back into shape around. And now I'm at that size M point, which is this line here. So I've got a ring one size smaller than I initially started with. So when we did that initial band around and we left that centimetre, this has gone down one size and my ring is there and ready to be worn. So let's try it on and see how it fits. Perfect. I shall be wearing that. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I'll just bring that up so you can see that a bit better. I'll be making lots more. I've got lots and lots planned for this coming week. Pop me a like down below if you've enjoyed it, and make sure you subscribe if you want to see more, and I will see you again very, very soon. Thank you very, very much for watching. Take care.